Hello my friends and welcome back to the channel. HeirofCarthage here. I apologize for having been dead to the world for the last week or so. It's because I mostly was. I was sick, I was working from home on some year beginning projects that have to be done like right now. In this time frame, I have more to do next week, but I am no longer sick. Well, maybe I'm a little sick in the sense that I'm still making videos after all these years and I never give up, but I'm not physically ill anymore. You know, if anything, I'm just mentally ill. But here I am, and I'm still having a good time. And I hope you all are too. Now, this is going to be an interesting one. This is an epic 1v1 matchup. This one's going to be between Epirus and Galatia. Now, in terms of just like how these factions stack up, Galatia is going to be better cavalry, better infantry. And honestly, Galatia has like mercenary Syrians at their disposal too. They can also be deadly from a skirmish, but you know, they kind of have to pick a lane at one point. If they spend a lot of money on those skirmishers, it makes it a little more difficult for them to be as dangerous. But they have noble horse, they have mercenary Cappadocians. They will present deadly melee cavalry, and they will present deadly melee infantry in the form of the Galatian legionaries. In this case, they've opted for Celtic slingers as a cost saving, and that makes sense. There's 4 of them up front, guarded by Galatian swords and levy freemen. Galatia is a relatively straightforward faction, but a deadly faction in many circumstances. Epirus, on the other hand, does not have particularly deadly infantry. Their cavalry is quite good for shot cavalry, because Thessalians are heavy shot cav for cheap. But shot cavalry has its downsides. Obviously, it hits very well on the charge, but then becomes quite vulnerable in melee. So it has to be used and timed well. So you're going to see a lot more support units for a faction like Epirus. These Tarentine cavalry are the first of those that we'll talk about. They provide speed and some skirmishing ability. They can make enemy slingers flinch. They can keep enemy cavalry at bay. They can force feint charges. They can do all kinds of stuff. And that's what you're seeing them do here. They're just doing a little distracting and baiting and allowing the slingers for Epirus to get started. And these are mercenary Rhodian slingers. Make no mistake about it, these slingers are very expensive and very deadly, but they also are a liability if they don't get used properly. Slingers aren't going to kill stuff rapidly like archers, but they will do a tremendous amount of armor-piercing damage, especially the Rhodians, because they have a high rate of fire. So they are dangerous indeed. Now, as far as infantry goes, the meat of any what do you call it? Epirus, I almost said Samnite army, because I was going to talk about Samnites, is Samnites. They're a heavy defensive infantry. They're not going to match up toe-to-toe with Galatian legionaries, but they will give them a very difficult fight. And if they are able to, you know, kind of ward off the charges and get in there right, they could certainly be a problem for the legionaries, but if they just went toe-to-toe, they would lose. So obviously that's not going to be objective. There are Illyrian levies. These units are armor-piercing because they're axe units, but they also have precursors that are pretty useful, and they won't do well unless you have done some damage to enemy infantry with your slingers. If the slingers can do that, then the Illyrian levies will perform well. Thurio spears are there to protect the flank for obvious reasons. Their javelins are good at warding off cavalry. And then we do have some Thessalian cavalry back here. There is a single unit of Molossan dogs. Dogs are a real specialist unit. They're very effective when you release them into an enemy who is using their troops for something already. So if you release it into a static unit, they're not going to do all that much, but let's say that units are charging and they're busy, then the dogs can be really quite effective, and they can be used to disrupt basically missiles or, you know, whatever else you might need to. But anyway, let's go ahead and hit play. Let's see how this plays out. The general for Epirus is in a Hellenic Royal Cavalry. That's a good place for a Hellenic general. And then we have a Noble Horse general here, which is going to provide a lot of maneuverability for the Galatians. Their infantry general, I believe, in vanilla is limited to a spear unit, and so I can see why you would pick the Noble Horse here. The Galatian swords did get torn up by the Rhodians, and the Tarentines are doing some serious annoyance here. They can't be ignored, and this is basically allowing the Rhodians to do extra damage, and they are picking on the swords. Look at that, 75, 51, 103. I mean, so the swords are getting picked on pretty badly by the Rhodians, and that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because Epirus does indeed need to weaken the melee capability of Galatia. Look at this charge here. The Tarentine cavalry drew the attention of the noble horse, and that's why it sacrificed itself here, I'm sure, so that the slingers could get some rapid shots into the noble horse. And so that, indeed, it appears to be the case here. The noble horse lost multiple units there, or sorry, multiple entities, which means that it took, fairly significant hit point damage as a result. Now, that noble horse is pissed, and it came charging forward like it was going to come straight in and get some revenge on those slingers, but then decided better of that, which was definitely the right call for the Galatian player. However, the Galatian player has taken some serious attrition on his light infantry, and then that cavalry is under fire by the slingers again. So the enemy general is going to be down a significant number of hit points. Now the Galatian legionary is being picked at by the Rhodians. So this is some patient and effective play so far by Epirus, making sure to weaken the appropriate units with the Rhodians. I would imagine that Epirus does not really want to get involved in a melee yet, but look at this. Galatia is trying to force the issue here, potentially. They called that off, but they were very close to forcing it, and now they're going to kind of fall back and position themselves. I think they're worried about overcommitting too early here. As well, you should be, because if you were to, leave the mercenary Rhodians alive, for instance, that would be very dangerous. The infantry continues to get picked at. So the slingers, I mean, if I show you their targeting here, this one they were targeting noble horse, they're going to have to call that off, but look at the Illyrian levies here. I don't know if this is a misclick or if they're intended to get this. Oh, no, they're trying to, I think they were trying to get a jab volley into the Cappadocian cavalry. That was actually a pretty cheeky play there.
Yes, Commander.
All right, so the Rhodians are going to have to fall back. They are taking some fire from the enemy slingers, but the Rhodians, I believe, are attempting to soften up the... Ooh, this is going to be annoying. Got to deal with these mercenary horse skirmishers. I don't know what the dogs would do if they would run after the horse skirmishers. I'm not sure whether that would be very effective or not. Probably not. That Thessalian cavalry is getting hurt pretty bad at the moment. The slingers are going to have to push those units back, but that gives the Galatians a chance to kind of move up here. It looks like Epirus is going to continue to reposition here. The militia hoplites are a nice heavy infantry, very heavy infantry in fact. They're not well armored, but they do provide a bit of staying power. Look at the Illyrian levies here trading. The mercenary Cappadocians headed that way. Yeah, that's a nice call there. Thuriospear is going to start dumping javelins into that fight. And it looks like the Illyrian levies are going to be used to kind of slow that charge down. And once the charge is met, look at this, now the dogs are going to be released because these units are busy already charging and fighting other units. And oh boy, yeah, no, that was really quite clever. The dogs went right through the line and into the slingers. Ouch. Yeah, that is going to be a rather gruesome result for the dogs. I think they're going to kill a considerable number of slingers. That was a very interesting play there. The noble horse general smashing some levies over here, but getting caught up in some Thessalian cavalry, and it looks like the Samnites are being brought in as kind of a last line of defense against these legionaries, and that's the right call. So like this legionary here was kind of softened up and is not going to perform well there. Let's take a look at this Samnite. It's in a bit more of a struggle there in the middle. Ooh, the noble horse general caught and cut down by Illyrian levies and Thessalian cavalry. Thessalian cavalry is quite effective in terms of cost, as long as it gets used properly. Well, yeah, look at those dogs. They definitely hacked through one of the slinger units. That was a good call, and these mercenary Rhodians are still alive, which means that anything they can get into their range is going to be hurt very badly. So like for instance that noble horse is probably going to be a target soon. Right now I think they're concerned about this Galatian legionary breaking through. I mean, just look at the damage stack up on that Galatian legionary. Only a militia hoplite in here holding, but that Galatian legionary taking pretty egregious losses, all things considered. I don't think that Freeman had a jab volley. Oh, it did. They just got it off late. So here comes the Hellenic Royal Cavalry, a dangerous cavalry unit. It's already got 60 kills. A very, very threatening unit if it gets into the back of any of these infantry fights. Look at the Illyrian levies combining with the Thessalian cavalry here. It's an interesting call. Illyrian levies will hit a little bit above their weight when it comes to anti-armor, but I mean they're a low attack unit because they are axes. Hellenic Royal Cavalry going to give a charge and then retreat through its own Samnite warriors and try and force the enemy into that fight. Boy, look at the slingers just making their will felt there. The levy's got a charge against that legionary, and they're going to pull out that Samnite warrior and militia hoplite holding very nicely here. And even here in the middle in that fight that was a little more even, I'm seeing a really good performance from the Samnites against those Galatian legionaries. I think as long as you moderate the charge of the Galatian legionaries, the Samnite can hang in there pretty well. I saw a lot of good moves by both players, honestly, in this battle, but I mean, this is a pretty interesting performance here by Epirus. Epirus, and I don't know, and if I'm wrong, like the greats of Rome 2 multiplayer, please jump in the comments if I'm incorrect, but I would think that Galatia is the better faction here. At least just from it has a more standard, straightforward, capable army. Obviously there are things that Epirus does better than Galatia, but again, I'm just speaking from like a generalist perspective. They have better infantry, they have better melee cavalry, and in a lot of ways that can make a big difference in Rome 2, but Epirus is going to pull off a very crafty and well-played victory here. Those slingers did survive until late into the game, but they're now going to be chased down, so look at this, though. Mercenary Cappadocian still out here, but boy, those Samnites performed well, very well. Every single one of the 3 Samnites is still alive, which, again, when you consider that they went head-to-head with a line of Galatian legionaries, is quite impressive in and of itself. So that is a very well done here by Epirus. Those Galatian horse skirmishers now coming in trying to get some kills late on the Rhodians, and they're going to get some. I think the Rhodians have spent pretty well all their ammunition at this point, though, so the damage has been done. That cavalry force caught up to the Samnites and smashed into them. It won't be quickly routed, though. The armor on the Samnites is rather significant at 95. Not to say that cavalry won't do some damage to them, they will. I just think it makes those troops a little more resilient to those cavalry charges. Oof, yeah, Thurio Spear still had javelins. So, yeah, Galatia is pretty well out of this one. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward. They don't have a way to fight their way back into this. But again, GG to both players. I hope you all enjoyed this one. It was really a great classic Rome 2 1v1 matchup here. This was Soul and Jazz. So I think these are interesting factions to match up against each other. And I think the dog play there actually was really cool, how it just shot through the line there. So thought that was nicely done. Very good job managing the Rhodian slingers. These are expensive investments, and it seems like every time I use them, I manage to not get my money's worth out of them. And so this is a good example, I think, of those units ended up being used well. I don't think this was a bad army pick by Galatia. I really don't. Like, I think this is fact a pretty darn solid army pick by Jazz. Now, beating skilled players in Rome 2 is difficult. And I'm sure that I would fall to either one of these players on any given day of the week. So when I say this as like looking at the battle, Jazz, don't be thinking this is me like, oh, well, I would have done this because I'm better, because I'm not. I'm definitely not at this point. So I think that there was a good army pick here. It's a dangerous army. It just wasn't able to quite finish the job here with some skillful play from Epirus. But in any case, GG to both players. HeirofCarthage signing out. I'll see you all soon with some more action in Total War Rome 2.